Speak to all of you here. Just pretend that, these are all, angels in these seats. But we do this anyhow. Thank God we have this television, or you could get depressed on occasions, and, as we want. Not really. But we're going to do, especially for those of you who have the television and haven't seen this before, we're going to do the book of Revelation. We'll do the whole book tonight, and we're going to do Revelation chapter 14. It's on page 1010 in little Bibles. Next week we come up with some pretty things, the bizarre evolution of the Bible, and something about, I can't even remember, the presidents and the cosmos and so forth, but it'll be fun. This is entitled Smoke It's in Your Eyes, and we're at Revelation chapter 14 is where we're going to look. And verse 11, and we're going to look at some of the symbolic statements in that particular scripture and see if we can get a handle on the book of Revelation from this particular point. Revelation chapter 14, verse 11, and it says, "And the smoke of their torment ascends up forever and ever." The torment in the word is an appropriate word. Just think of that word for a minute. We don't have to go too far with this tonight. We don't have to do 7 pages. We don't have to do a chapter. We can just, focus on a few things that are relevant. That word is, when you would think of it and reading it in the Bible, you'd probably just, go past it, overlook it, not really spend a whole lot of time. And yet this is the problem. There's wars, there's rapes, there's child abuse, there's mistreatment cruelly to animals, there's the damaging of ecology, and all of these things come out of this word because there's like we were talking this morning, there's a basic flaw somewhere. There's an unhappiness. And it really is a torment. I was talking to a couple of people this morning after the service, and I had said that there's a time probably when everybody would say, gee, I would just like to be on a plane and take off from New York, whatever, just get out of here. There were people who would say, I'll just leave the kids, leave the house, just get out of here. Because there's a torment that goes on. And there was a couple of people who said they felt exactly that way right now. They're going through these things. And it's not something that you can escape from simply because when the torment's over and the quiet settles in, before you know it comes back again. And that's not unlike the macrocosm in the universe we're talking about. Of when the sun reaches Pegasus' neck, the horse's neck, there'll be 1,000 years of peace. And after that 1,000 years, Saturn comes back and its influence, and the whole stuff starts all over again. Well, that's a macrocosm of 1,000 years of peace. But on Earth here, you might get, 3 or 4 days, and then bang, it comes back again. That's just the way it is. It all comes in a cycle. And you have all various types of torment. You can have everything from indigestion to a headache to just a nasty feeling. But it's cyclic and it happens. And it says the smoke of their torment ascends up forever and ever. It's not something that you can make go away. And I think we were studying the Gnostics this morning, and I think they really hit the nail right on the head, because what they said was trying to solve all of these things on the outside is futile. They can't be solved. It's a never-ending thing. And so what they said is, how do we live among it, amidst it? Then that has to be from the changing of that which is the mind. What is smoke? Notice what it says. The smoke of their torment. Well, we all know what smoke is, but what does it do? It blocks the light out. Makes it so you can't breathe. It strangles you, say. And where does it come from? Smoke comes from fire. And in this particular instance, that which is fire, when you're discussing the lower mind, is passion, ego, the desire, which Buddha says is the root of all problems. The desire, the ego, the passion is the fire, which is in the lower flesh, which causes that to rise. And so it's described symbolically as smoke rising. So the passions, the desires, the ego for us to live in the way we want to live, and the way the system tells us to live, the way religion tells us to live, the way the government tells us to live, it sends a smoke up which actually blinds us. It covers our eyes so we can't see. And then we become blind. We can't see. We can't feel our way. And so that's what it says here in Revelation chapter 14, verse 11. And the smoke of their torment ascends up forever and ever And then it says, and they have no rest day or night. They have no rest day or night. So what do you need? Well, the first thing, let's put this in the context of, a little deeper allegory. Let's put it in the context of a fire in a house, fire in a building. You have smoke and you have fire. What do you have to do? You have to get out of there. Where do you have to do? You have to go out and get into the air. Exactly. And there you reach that third stage of consciousness. That's the stage of consciousness. And when I say third stage of consciousness, every society, every culture in the world has a 5-stage of consciousness, and in Greek, the third stage is air. And when I say the third stage of consciousness, I'm saying to elevate to a different aspect of the mind. You have the earth stage, which is the stage we're using now, the intellectual stage, the conversational stage. Okay. You have the water stage in which you rise above the earth, and conversational stage above the intellectual stage, and then you seek truth within yourself. That's the water stage. The third stage is when you move above that which is the truth into that which is meditation, which is air. That's the third stage. When the Apostle Paul had an out-of-body experience, he said he was taken up into the third heaven. That means he rose up into the third stage of consciousness. It says in 1 Kings 6:8 that when they constructed the temple, there were stairs that went up to the right side that were winding, and they went out from the right side up into the third, which means it's the same thing, air. So here, in order then for us to get away from the smoke and the fire, the passions and the ego and the desires of the mind which torment us, we've got to get out into the air. It's as relevant as if you were in a building on fire. And that's what the first thing you have to do. You've got to get out into the air, because it's the air that dispels the smoke, and it's the same way spiritually. If you move into the third stage of consciousness, which is the meditational stage, you dispel the smoke and the fire which torments you and comes from the passions of the ego and the desire. So that's how you break it. So you break a bit of the code. Look, let's read it again. Okay. And the smoke of their torment ascends up forever and ever, and they have no rest day and night. Certainly they don't. I actually sat in this place this morning. I'm not telling anything out of school. Was talking to two people who talked about what I had said in this morning's service, and tears came to their eyes, and they both started crying. Why? Because there's an unhappiness. For whatever reason, there is a torment somewhere deep within themselves, and it brought something to them. But they said they just wanted to get on that plane and go away. They can't contend with it anymore. So day after day, this torment goes on. And generally, it's as a result of our own creation. It comes out of the passions of the ego and the passions of the desire. It's not something that comes as a result of some God. It comes because we've never had teachers who have explained to us how this works. All we've had was have teachers who blamed it on devils and told us to come in and sing songs and give money and ring bells and chimes and organs playing, but nobody ever got down to the psychology of life, what it's all about, so that we could understand why we feel this way, that we will feel this way, that this will never go away, but that when we are in the clutches of the smoke and the fire of the passions of the ego and the desire, we must get out into the air. All right? And it's the same thing you would do in a fire, and it's what you have to do in a spiritual fire. You have to get out into the air. Okay. And there's no rest. Your mind never leaves you alone. It never stops. And if you get counseling, that's fine, that helps. You can go to a psychiatrist, psychoanalyst, you can go to a counselor, and they may give you pills, and they may give you, what are some of the stuff they give for stress? Tranquilizers and things like that, and that's fine. And it's very necessary for a lot of people. There's nothing wrong with that. A lot of people will put that down. If you need it, you need it. But it's a temporary thing. Because somebody's got to get here and find out what is causing that. Because, it's like what is Elvis Presley or Marilyn Monroe, all these different people, they had this. They were in the torment of the mind, and so they took things to try to put the fire out and try to get rid of the smoke. And maybe they did to a certain extent, but they never got out of here, never got into the air, and eventually died, and basically died from the torment. So it can be deadly. You want to stand up and say what you have to say so that we can... All right, we'll wait on you. As they say in the Billy Graham Crusades, we'll wait on you to come down, and you'll get some literature and all that. Come on, will you?
All I wanted to say was that unless you meditate, you can't focus. So you can go and see someone and try and get help, but you'll keep going in that proverbial circle until you meditate, because the meditation centers you and brings you into focus, and then you can see what it is that's bothering you.
You were talking earlier, in my job, I went through courses, management courses that were taught by a fellow I'd love to get down here sometime. He's a psychologist. His name is Rich Petrino, and he's a teacher psychologist. And in every aspect of life, and this was in business management and how to deal with other people, it went to basically what you're saying. You have to change the center of yourself. How do you think? Because no matter what you try to do, when you try to change that which is around you, you'll make some degree of progress, but it won't be long before you fall back into the same hole, because the center is the same.
But I don't believe on your own you can even change your center. The meditation changes the center for you.
Yeah.
Because as soon as you go under stress, you're going to revert back to how you were before if you try and do it through the intellect.
Well, what about the circumstance? People will adjust the circumstance. Maybe make the circumstance a little bit better by doing this or doing that or doing the other thing. But then, and I say very little about what you discuss in your confidential, counseling sessions, but I will see in some instances where people who fall out of it, get away from the meditation and try the best they can to correct the problem. Basically, either you hear of some kind of tragic situation or they come racing back because, it worked only for a moment or two.
Right. And the meditation is lasting because you're touching that child within. You're touching the core of you.
Okay.
So you have to stay in the meditation. I mean, it's just, you don't really have a choice.
Okay.
And some people resent that, but...
why would a person resent that?
Because you have to do something. And you're given the obligation that it's your choice, okay? And if you don't do it, then, it's just your life is going to stay the same. So some people don't want to do the work, okay? They don't want to have the task. They want somebody else to do it for them, okay? Because it's easier to have somebody else do it for you and give you the answers than it is to do the work yourself.
So that's very Gnostic, and that's very Carl Jung, who said that that's the hardest thing for a person to realize, that unless they get away from the self, the alienation from the self, they're never going to be able to find selfhood unless they get away from that self.
But once you do, then your life is different. The whole quality of your life changes.
Okay.
And it just opens up, and like I like to describe it as the onion peel, that you just start peeling that onion, and it's very gentle. And it's different with everybody, and it's just layer by layer that this self will peel away, and you'll just see another little layer there. Okay, now I can work on this, and okay, now I did that, and then just another layer. And when you do it in that way, it's not somebody pressuring you that you have to conform. Okay, because there's no conforming. This is you, the individual you. Okay, and very different for everybody, and everybody's progress is different.
And there is then no technique, because a person as an individual will have to find, or will have to just expose themselves to that source until the change takes place by itself.
There's certainly aids that you can use. You have to do the work. You have to do the reading. You have to do the looking at the self, go back to the child and what happened to you as a child that makes you as you are now.
I guess it would seem to be an instruction pattern of some type that is set for each person, because each person needs a specific set of instructions that, my set of instructions may be different than Tommy's or different, and I read recently a quote from a Eastern guru, because they're the only ones that can make these types of comments that have such meaning to them. But he said the cosmos does ordain for each individual thing. He said there is not an individual blade of grass that can sprout until an electromagnetic intelligence points its finger down and says, now grow. And I think basically that's what you're saying, that people trying to change
Through the environment.
their state without that finger saying, now grow. It's impossible.
Yeah, everybody has their own time.
So then we really come to the point of opening up what this thing called God is. You know, now we're talking about an intelligent direction for my life or your life or Ethel's life or whom it is, specifically geared for that life.
And you just have to leave people alone. If they don't feel that this is their journey, then you just have to let them go on their own life's pattern. You
Okay.
can't force anybody to do this.
So that's not unlike then Jesus who's saying, let the weed grow with the weed.
Yes.
Let the person alone. And let that person continue to expose itself to the nourishment that nourishes the weed until then the weed will fall away.
And in this lifetime, they might not do it, and that's okay. That's their journey.
That's
and,
interesting.
and you can't like pressure a person and say you have to do this because it just might not be their time. Maybe something else has to happen to them in this lifetime before maybe in their next lifetime they'll do the work.
Good. Anybody have anything else that you want to add or any feelings about it? Or?
But I just want to say something. In every message that you give, it always comes back to meditation. Every single, no matter what the message is.
Well,
And
you know, it's funny you said that because I remember some people that used to come here that left because it's all he ever talks about is meditation.
Yeah, but really the center of each of your messages comes back to meditation.
Well, I think, though, really, the words sometimes, basically, if we could somehow change that word or get the idea conveyed, it's not meditation, it's self-realization.
But see, that's Maslow, and that's Abraham Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And that's the highest level, is the self-realization or the self-actualization. And he said many years ago before he died, very few people self-actualize.
Very few.
Very few.
And before him there was a young man named Jesus who said the road is narrow and few there be who find it. So Abraham Maslow and this Jesus
But this brings you into self-actualization. Meditation brings you to self-actualization. So really then, if Maslow knew that, then maybe his teaching would have been different. Okay?
Okay. Yeah, I see what you're saying.
Okay? Because when you meditate, you self-actualize.
Okay, but Jesus did know it.
Oh, yeah.
Because he talked about the single eye and the inner kingdom and talked about the self and the ability to do the things that he did. So he was talking about a real renewal. But he was a lot closer to the Buddha and he was a lot closer to the East and to the Essenes and so forth. So then he would have had that experience. But when you go into the Western culture of a Maslow for people like that, who are more intellectual, it's just like the people of today. Because there's a lot of psychiatrists and the doctors of today who are beginning to understand these things and use them. But for the most part, you go back a few years ago, these are unheard of principles and they weren't even considered. If it's either drugs or a knife or nothing, you know, it couldn't be anything.
But Maslow only studied healthy people, so-called healthy people. Okay? He didn't do the work of Jung and Freud. He studied the healthy people, and he said very few self-actualize.
Wow, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Where Jung confronted the sick, and then he became sick himself in order to find out what they were going through. Yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, very good. Okay, well, let's do a little more. Maybe we'll talk some more. All right, that's fine. And we'll bring one of these nights, bring the chairs around in a circle and let everybody talk or something. Good, very good. Okay. Let's look in now at 14:11, where we were. They have no rest day or night, who worship the beast and his image, and whoever received the mark of his name. Okay? And we know what the beast is. The beast and his image is 666, which is 1/8, which equals 9. The beast is consciousness, and his mark. That's the mark, and his name, which means his way. That's what we were talking this morning. It's very hard, really hard for people to understand. When you talk about the word name, when Jesus said, do this in my name, we use his name as if you'd use John Doe's name. The word does not mean name in the way that shoot the bull does not mean bull. Spill the beans does not mean beans. Off the wall does not mean wall. Use my name does not mean name. It means the way I tell you. The mark of the beast is the lower mind and the way. It means the way of the lower mind. And that's the worship. That is the God of our culture. It is the way of the lower mind. And it says here in 14:11, who worship the beast and his image, and whoever receives the mark of his name, or the mark of the way of the lower mind. And it's torment. It is a never-ending torment. And we see it. It results in this country, the United States of America, and Tommy, I guess you could testify as a police officer to it, the remarks coming that we are very close to the point where more people will die at the end of a barrel of a gun than from automobile accidents. Bizarre. That's torment. Everybody's running around with a gun because of trying to get what they haven't been able to get through the system because they can't compete in the system, or out of the vengeance of the passions and the egos and the desires. I mean, we're at a period of time now where we have a young girl who's a skating person, a professional, and a magnificent skater. I mean, she is Tanya Harding, a magnificent skater. And instead of going to the Olympics and being, surrounded with flowers and doing her best, she's caught up in all of this mess. Because whether it was her or whomever, there's a desire that the only way we can get this is hurt somebody else. It doesn't, and it just, and I'm sure these people are sitting down now saying, what did we do this for? But it's too late. It's already been done. Why did they do it? Because the smoke that came from the fire, or the passions of the desire, blinded them to the reality and the result. There was no air to get rid of the smoke, and they are now involved in the torment of the act. Before they were involved in the torment of maybe the other girl's going to win. So we'll have to do something because there was such an ego and such a desire, and the fire that came from that ego blinded them by the smoke so they couldn't see what the results are going to be, and you got all of this mess. And but we look at her and we say, well, this is terrible. But she's just a small, it's going on every day. People do it a lot worse than her. They do it with knives and guns and so forth and so on for a lot less. For a lot less. So it's a good study. The book of Revelation is a good study when you begin to understand it this way. If you have your gas skills and sometimes go line by line. I think a lot of people make a mistake when you go into the book of Revelation. You try to read a page. You can't do that. You have to read a sentence. This doesn't flow. It's not a novel. It's not something you read like a book. These are little psychological explanations of the workings of the human mind covered over in symbolism. But very, very interesting symbolism. So it's good to do that. Revelation 14:12. It says, "Here is the patience of the saints. Here are they that keep the commandments of God and the faith of Jesus." Okay? Gee, that sounds religious, doesn't it? And basically, in my old days of reading that, Albert, I'm gone. Here's the patience of the saints, and I can see little pictures and cards with people with halos around their head. The ones that keep the commandments, and I can see, the faith of Jesus, I'm gone. It's a religious thing, and I'm not really interested in that at all. But here it is patience. Let's look at the word patience first before we go anywhere. The patience, I had a fellow come up to me today in church, somebody that you all know. And he said to me, I know that in my condition I have to meditate every day. And he said, I know that, like you say, 15 seconds. Why don't I do it? And I said, well, you see, there's the thing. You cannot give 15 seconds of your day. And you talk about disciplining yourself and having the patience, okay, to do that, to follow these instructions, and to have faith in Jesus is not in any way, shape, or form to say, I believe Jesus lives. It's saying, okay, I'll do what you say. That's all it means. To have faith in Jesus means, I'll do what you say. It's the same way that you may have faith in somebody who gives you directions. Go up that way. You don't feel good, you call your doctor. Your doctor says, take this. You have faith. I'll do it. It's not saying that you have faith that your doctor lives, or that your doctor's a good man, or but you simply say, okay, you have some knowledge, I'll do what you say. And so basically that's it. Here is the patience of the saints. And saints are people who comply with it. Saints are simply people who have said, I will overcome this, get out of the smoke and fire, go up into the air, get some air, and then become part of that thing which is nature, that which is God. That's the saints who have faith in Jesus. I will do this as he said. And remember what it says about Jesus. We will rise to meet him in the... Yeah. Right. And remember what Jesus is. Not a person, not a human being. Jesus is a philosophy. Jesus is an ideal. Jesus is a way. See? Not a man, not a hero, because that doesn't do anything. And the voice that came from the person asked you diligently, take your attention off of me. Who made me judge or divider over you? I don't want that job. Don't ask me for anything. I'm not going to pray for you. You pray for yourself. He said that in the Bible. He knew. See? So he didn't want to be your hero. He wants you to be your hero. And so when you rise to meet Jesus in the air, you're rising to meet that which is the I am. You rise up into the third stage of consciousness. You come then with a clear vision. You overcome the smoke and the fire that comes from the passion of the ego, and you get a breath of air, because you're going to have to go back in here. You're going to have to go back into the burning building, which is yourself. But you, see, look, you're like a fireman. You go into the burning building, you fight the fire, then you come out and get some air. Well, when you're coming out to get air, you're meditating. Because as soon as the meditation's over, you got to put your fire suit on and go back into the building again. You know, that's the way life is. But unfortunately, most of us hide in a corner of the burning building with a blanket over our head and suffocate and scream and yell and kick our feet. And it's hot in here. I can't stand it. Somebody do something. Well, Jesus says, sure, you dope. Get the heck out of there and get some air. And that's what meditation is. Well, that's beautiful. You know what's good about this? I had no idea it was going to go this way tonight. And I think we simplified something and we opened the door on something. And, you know, it's basically the way that I would like to go. And I just don't have the time. And I, you know, sometimes need other people to get into these things and go line by line. You know, I got half-hour programs and, you know, you got to tell everything, the whole world, tell the whole story, or people get ticked off that they haven't heard enough, you know, hot stuff and all of this kind of stuff. 14:13, and I heard a voice from heaven saying unto me, write. I heard a voice from heaven. I've heard a voice from heaven. So then I feel an impulse from my inner nature. I feel something communicating to me. And that's what the voice from heaven is, because heaven is the kingdom of God, and Jesus says the kingdom of God is within you, so that you hear a voice from heaven, you're hearing a voice from within yourself, but you're not hearing an audible voice. The word voice means it's an impulse. Remember, your look, this is where, if we could only somehow, Albert, you're the guy that, you know, if we could only somehow get to people, I heard a voice. Nobody ever hears a voice, because there is no such thing as a voice. What goes on is my tongue is vibrating the air in a particular way. And you have little things in your ears that are going like this. And they are causing an electrical impulse to the brain, which is making this sound like and be an explanation to you, but actually it's all of this vibration and the electronic aspects of your brain making you think you hear, or making you think that you see. You don't see anything. You don't see anything. There's two cameras here, and they're transmitting an electrical impulse in the brain, and it creates this television thing somewhere. I don't understand it all, but you don't see anything, you don't hear anything. I mean, come on. You know the old story, if there's a tree falls in the forest and nobody's around, does it make a noise? No! It can't! Because noise is not made by the thing that falls. Noise is made when the little things in the ear vibrates, and if there's nothing there to vibrate, you know, you can't. So, how did I get into that? I don't know. I heard a voice from heaven simply means there's an electrical impulse that stimulates you to say, I will, or I am, or I am going to do. There's something that draws you upward. I heard a voice from heaven saying, write. In other words, record this. And this is it. Blessed are the dead which die in the Lord from henceforth. Now, in the old days of the Bible, it's always this. Blessed are the dead. You know, blessed are the dead. The one thing you don't want to do is die. Nobody wants to die. If blessed are the dead, then you know what? Your instincts would be to die. Your instincts are to live. Jesus says, "Fakakta with the dead." God is not a God of the dead. God is the God of the living. So what does it mean, blessed are the dead? Let me show you what it is. Blessed are the dead which die in the Lord henceforth. Go to page 941 in the Bible, and that's 1 Corinthians chapter 15. 1 Corinthians chapter 15. Look at verse 31. And what does Paul say? "I protest by your rejoicing, which I have in Christ Jesus our Lord, I die daily." Aha! I die daily. To die daily is to yield up your life. You actually separate from the living part of the flesh and you enter into that which is non-living, if you would, from the standpoint of humanity, but living from the standpoint of God's Spirit. So you die daily. Blessed are the dead. Okay. Blessed are the dead which die henceforth in the Lord. To die daily is to yield up your life. And that's the same thing. To die daily is simply another word to say meditate, separating your mind, your thoughts. And look at Revelation 14, verse 13. We'll just slow down for 1 second. Revelation chapter 14, verse 13. "And I heard a voice from heaven," we know what that is. "Blessed are the dead which die in the Lord from henceforth. Yes, said the Spirit, that they may rest from their labors, and their works do follow them." They may rest from their labors. And your rest, like Joan said a moment ago, we come back to that point, is meditation. That you may rest from your labors. And what does that mean? Well, if we get down to the science of Hinduism, the science of the New Age, if you would, you come in your meditation up those chakras, the seventh chakra impacting the crown, the pineal area, which is the seventh. That they may rest, which is the seventh, which is the word Sabbath, which is the rest. The seventh is Sabbath. Sabbath is rest. And that's what the word means. And basically this was the rule of the Sabbath. Okay? Watch. In the human brain, for the ancient mystics, the left side of the brain, the left hemisphere of the brain was your working side. The right side was the holy city, was the east. In the Bible, it's called Jerusalem. The Apostle Paul says, "Jerusalem, which is above, is free and is the mother of us all." All of the ministers who were screaming about the feminists who gathered and worshiped Sophia forgot that Paul said, "Jerusalem, which is above, is free and is the mother of us all," the feminine principle. Okay, when you go into meditation, Jesus says, "Take no thought." Your thoughts are your burdens. Your thoughts are your torments. Your thoughts are your work. You take no thought. This was the instruction of the Sabbath. One could take no burden into the holy city on the Sabbath. When you then rise in your meditation up to the seventh, to the place of the pineal gland, none of your thoughts can enter. And that's why Jesus says, take no thought. You cannot take a thought into the holy city, which is the right hemisphere of your brain. Thoughts can't work in there. That's no place for thoughts. Thoughts operate on the left side of the brain, not the right side of the brain, not the right hemisphere of the brain. And so basically that's it. To rest is Sabbath, which is the seventh seal, or which is the pineal. Okay. And the works will follow. Look what it says there. 14:13. Where am I here? Revelation 14:13. Yes, said the Spirit, that they may rest from their labors, and their works do follow them. What are you doing? What's changed in your life? How is your life different than it was before? What you actually do? How do you react? How do I react? In some ways, I react the way I always reacted, but not as quite as wild as I do. I mean, I'm not as quite as bizarre as I used to be. My temper can explode, but the explosions are not as frequent as they used to be. No. Not near as bad. See, there's a change. But see, you can't. But basically, let me tell you something. The change that comes from nature, that comes from God, is a subtle change. And it's a change that comes over a period of time. If it was a smack, here you're a new, well, then what's the sense of it? How are you going to learn anything? All of a sudden, I'm not the same person anymore. But I don't. I don't kick walls and throw my fist through things, which I used to do. So there's a change. I still lose it. I still get sulking and sullen sometimes and sulk around just for the sake of it. I can tell when the sulking time is coming. It's like a storm. You know, you hear the storm rumbling over, and you know it's coming, and you can feel it in your head. I am going to sulk.
DMS.
Yeah, DMS. I am going to sulk. And when that comes upon you, you know the funny thing is? There's nothing in the world. It's like Joan said before, there's nothing in the world. Nobody can talk you out of it. Because as people try to talk you out of it, you go deeper into it. Okay. Now I think that bears out what you're saying. You just made up your mind. Because there's a point there, people can't even be nice to you at that point. You know? I don't want that. I want to sulk. I am mad. What for? I don't know. I just am. So,
You're like a woman.
right. Right. But I mean, the point is, everybody is. I mean, what I'm saying is this is something that infects everybody. Well, they should do it because it's fun. It's fun to do it. You do it, Tom?
I do it quite often.
Yeah, that's right.
Tom does it quite often. Ever do it, Al?
Oh, and me never.
Uncle Joe? Yeah. Well, see, that's it. But no, I get up.
I said the men do it, the women don't do it.
The
Except
women.
maybe once a month, okay? But you can choose your time of the month.
I do it more than once a month, don't you?
Yeah, I know it. I know.
But it is a normal thing, and I can sense it when it comes on, and I just, you know, you can sense it.
You like it. You entertain yourself with it.
Yes, it's a
Yeah.
degree. It
Yeah.
is. It's exciting. I am going to be this way, and that's the end of it.
So then we just leave you alone in your room until you get out of it.
Right, and then it goes away.
I shut the door.
And you know, it's great. You go to bed and you're mad and you don't talk to anybody and you just go to bed and sleep and you get up the next morning and how is everybody? You know, everybody's wonderful.
You're like your daddy.
No. No. Well, he was kind of like that.
I know.
He did. The only thing is, when he went to bed, everybody would hover in the cellar until he was quiet, and he'd take his shoes off and throw them up against the wall one at a time, because we all used to hide down in the coal bins, you know, so he wouldn't know where we were. He was a pretty violent guy. He's a wonderful guy, but he was a violent guy, and you know, he got out of his way. But we'd all wait, and we'd hear the first shoe, and you'd hear wham, as it would hit the wall, and we'd look at each other and say, "That's one," you know. And then wham, the second one, and then that was it. And you waited about 5 minutes after that, and that was it. He was done. Next morning, he had his pinstripe suit, white shirt with a starched collar, tie. He had a flower in his boutonniere, and he'd struck down the boulevard, and everybody would come out from the houses. "How do you do, Mr. Donahue? How do you do? How do you do?" I'm telling you, it's the wildest thing. And he was the head decorator at Macy's department store in New York, and he'd walk into Macy's. "How do you do, Mr. Donahue? How do you do? How do you do?" Nobody knew he's throwing his shoes through the wall. And I'm hiding in a coal bin for this guy.
That's called House Devil, Street Angel.
But nonetheless, but see, that was induced. That's a whole different thing, because that was induced by alcohol.
Do you remember when you wouldn't talk to people when you'd be in the
Excuse me, what is it?
Do you remember when people came to the house and you were in one of your moods, you wouldn't talk to them?
Absolutely.
Yeah, you'd sit there,
Absolutely.
stare at you.
Stare at you. I do better than that now, don't
Oh
I?
yeah, you're really good.
Yeah.
Most of the time you wouldn't talk to people.
I wouldn't talk to anybody.
Yeah,
Now you're not at the
yeah.
Yeah, but that's true. That's true. And I had a bad habit of being very demonstrative to people. You know, it was embarrassing. I mean, you know, there's pictures of me at a party.
But I think you need
One of-
demonstrative. You weren't demonstrative.
Well, the time I left my coat on at the party.
Well, you send a message.
Yeah, well, that's what
Sat
I'm...
there all night long like this.
and if, you
Is
know,
Bill having a good time? I said, yeah.
He just doesn't take his coat off at parties, you know.
He's entertaining himself.
They have movies.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. So, but I've changed a lot. I have changed
Yeah,
a
you
lot.
have.
And
It's been tremendous. You're more like a woman now. The female side of you is coming out. Really, the female side of you is coming out.
Yeah, but why? Yeah, but now that's
and that's
interesting.
good. And that's
Yeah,
good.
that's important.
Yeah, you're showing your emotions a little bit more controlled, like women do.
See, I never thought of it that way.
It really
Is that
isn't
why I like to
true.
go to Key West?
I was just teasing with that one.
Yeah,
But you're able to control yourself now,
okay.
and you're able to express
But I think that's
yourself.
from meditation.
Oh,
I know it's from
definitely,
meditation.
definitely.
Yeah,
Yeah,
That's good.
definitely. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Let's just
All
sit
right.
down.
Well,
We don't have a piece of chromosome.
Come on. Can you want to get out of the way a minute, please? Al, get rid of the ladies here. I mean,
Yeah.
what'd you say?
No, I'm afraid we don't have a piece of chromosome in our genes. It's not there.
I don't even know what you're talking about. What? That's. You're a scissor.
In our
Yeah.
genes, we don't have a piece of chromosome.
For what?
Be female.
Oh, for to be female. Oh, I see what you're saying.
Makes us different, totally different.
I see what you're saying. So then we're not able to do the things that a female is able
No.
to do as far as consciousness is
No,
concerned.
that's right.
And
And
move.
many of things, long of life living, we're great at the beginning. We are ahead of women, but of girls. But eventually, we die first.
Oh, don't say that.
No, but we do. Our personality is quite a bit different.
Yeah. Things are not looking good then, are they? Yeah.
Well, I don't know. The point is that it truly means that the female is more stable.
Yeah. That means I'm unstable, or
Never say that.
No.
Never
No.
say that. Never say that. But there is a real difference because of too much talking about men and women are the same. They're not. They're not.
They do everything.
Genetically, there's a difference.
okay. Yeah, you know what I'm glad you added that in, because when we look at these things on the board about the Bible and instructions and meditation and so forth, we still cannot disregard the genetic structure and the makeup of the individual. One person reacts to meditation, if it's a male, one way, a female may act in a different way to the same force. So the force is going to, it's just like a comparison, but of a dog and a cat or a bird or whatever, everything reacts according to its genetic makeup and its structure.
Right.
So it's not just a simple read the Bible and everything's going to be okay.
Nope.
There's an awful lot that depends on the structure of the person, right down to, like you say, the genetics. That's good.
But don't you think that with
Please.
don't you think though with meditation?
Why don't you here? Come over here. Why don't you sit over. We'll sit over next to
I'm
you.
going to face shame.
It doesn't have to be like. Go ahead.
No, but what I was saying was, we all have male and female inside of us.
Yes.
Okay, but with meditation and with this age of Aquarius, the female is being liberated in men. Okay, that now a man can show his emotions. Now men are becoming more intuitive. Okay, things that they didn't have before, and then women are getting maybe a little bit more assertive than they were before, so that the male side of them then is also emerging.
Yes, you go back to the old thing that the women are more spiritual,
Scratching
whereas
the
the
leg.
men have more physical entities. So therefore, in our way today, it's both going the other way. Women are more. Women have a little more men, and vice versa. Yes, and it's more obvious. And,
Yeah.
and now we can talk about it, which could never be done. Yeah.
It's really neat because I can see the female coming out in Bill, and I can see the female coming out in a lot of other men that I know. Whereas now they're able to talk about, this is how I feel and this is how I think, whereas before all of those emotions were so stuffed that they just didn't deal with them. And that's a shame because then all of those things stay inside of you and you never address how you really feel, so then you really never know who you are.
That's right.
And it's just beautiful, and I can see that happening with Bill a lot. That he's able to say now, well, this is what I think, and this is what I mean, and this is what I feel, and this is what I want.
Yes.
Well, I think too, like me, and it's always been my way, that I would not tell somebody how I feel because there was just something in me that it was like letting down my independence, my maleness by telling somebody this. And so you hide. It's like an animal that hides something in its cave, and just dares you to come near it, and nobody's going to know. But now you get into a point where sometimes, like when Joan and I go to a restaurant, when I'm in a mood, I'll just spill out things that happened to me as a child, and that I don't tell other people. And it depends. If you're in the mood, it just flows with them. The door opens, it gets out.
And as John said before, in meditation, there is no both. It's all female, no matter what you do.
Yeah.
Whether a man meditates or a female, it all comes out the same way to the mother. It has to be.
That's beautiful.
Can I go back? Let me just, let me just show you something with what Albert was saying. I don't know if I can find this here. When we talk about the female, okay, and Jesus says you take away the key because you don't have it within yourself. What Albert was just talking about, and John was talking about, this wisdom and this understanding, and when the women are worshiping Sophia, which means wisdom. Could somebody tell me, in the Bibles you have, what page is Proverbs on? The book of Proverbs. And the book of Proverbs.
What verse, Bill?
Chapter 1.
541.
Okay. What I would like you to do is take a look at that. And for those of you that have Bibles at home, what you heard Joan and Albert discussing about the female side. There's a very interesting thing. We're going to get into it when we talk about homosexuality in some weeks coming up. That God is portrayed, and it's going to sound a little funny to you now, it's going to sound very funny to you, but I'm telling you a fact. In the book of Revelation, God is portrayed wearing a bra. The paps, girded about the paps. And there is this indication of the female aspect of what we call God. But let us look at this Proverbs chapter 1, and Albert, I think this bears out what you and Joan were talking about. Look at verse 20. Wisdom cries out. She utters her voice in the streets. She cries in the chief places of the concourse and the openings of the gates. In the city, she utters her words, saying, "How long, you simple ones, will you love simplicity? And the scorners delight in their scorning, and the fools hate knowledge. Turn at my reproof. Behold, I will pour out my spirit unto you. I will make known my words unto you." But you hear it a lot of times. It says, oh, God, this Holy Spirit pouring out His Spirit. It says, she says, I will pour out my Spirit unto you. It's a beautiful thing what we're learning in this age of Aquarius, which is an age of consciousness and an age of the feminine spirit. And that is why you sit and you've watched all this women's groups and National Organization of Women. It all comes at the beckoning of Uranus and Aquarius, which points its finger as it does to the little blade of grass and says, now, go. Thank you for taking part and sharing. We had a good time, interesting time in discussing some of these things. And we'll do a little more of that. And you should make yourself a little more available for these television things. I think you have things to say. Thank you very much.